He thought he was just hiring a stranger to play the part of his date for a single night. But sometimes, life writes stories that no contract, no plan, and no amount of money can predict. What began as a temporary arrangement at a party became the beginning of a love story that wasn't just his, it was also his daughter's. Because when a little girl looked up with teary eyes and whispered, "Daddy, can she stay forever?" the walls around his heart began to fall. Ethan Carter was a man who had it all, or so the world believed. At just 35, he was the CEO of a leading tech company in New York, admired for his vision, power, and wealth. But behind the glass walls of his towering office and the spotless suits he wore, he carried a loneliness he never spoke of. 5 years ago, his wife, his college sweetheart, had passed away after a sudden illness, leaving him as the sole parent to their little girl, Lily. Since then, Ethan had buried himself in work, not because he loved the money, but because it was the only way he knew to drown out the silence at home. Lily, now 7, was the sunshine of his life. She was the reason he woke up, the reason he kept going, and the only person who could make him smile after the longest of days. But as much as Ethan adored his daughter, he often wondered if she missed having a motherly figure, a gentle hand to braid her hair, a voice to tell her bedtime stories, a warmth he simply couldn't replace. When the company announced a grand annual gala, Ethan wasn't thrilled. Social events drained him, but this one was unavoidable. Investors, partners, and the media would all be there. The unspoken rule was that a CEO never arrived alone. For Ethan, this meant facing the whispers again, poor man, still alone, or worse, shallow attempts at matchmaking. That night, as he scrolled through his emails, he found himself staring at a peculiar advertisement forwarded by a colleague, a professional, companion for hire, service. The idea felt shallow, even ridiculous. But as he looked at his reflection, exhausted and alone, he sighed. One night. Just one night. No questions asked. That's how Ethan made the call that would change his life. When Grace Summers entered the hotel lobby, Ethan almost forgot to breathe. She wasn't glamorous in the way one might expect from a hired date. There was no exaggerated makeup, no sparkling dress that screamed for attention. Instead, she carried a simple elegance, a navy blue gown, soft curls resting on her shoulders, and eyes that seemed to hold unspoken stories. "Mr. Carter," she asked gently, her voice steady but warm. Ethan nodded, suddenly unsure of himself. For someone who negotiated million-dollar deals without blinking, he felt oddly nervous. As the night unfolded, Ethan realized Grace was not what he expected. She wasn't rehearsed or artificial. She laughed at Lily's silly stories. Lily insisted on tagging along for the car ride before being dropped off at her nanny's. She knew how to hold a genuine conversation, and she carried herself with grace that silenced even the most judgmental glances in the ballroom. For once, Ethan didn't feel like he was putting on a show. Investors leaned in, not just impressed by Ethan's confidence, but charmed by Grace's warmth. For years, Ethan had carried the image of a lonely widower who buried himself in work, but tonight, with Grace beside him, he looked alive. What he didn't realize was that Lily hadn't forgotten Grace. From the moment she saw her, Lily's eyes had followed her with a child's innocent curiosity. When the party ended and Grace politely said her goodbyes, Lily tugged at Ethan's sleeve in the car. "Daddy, will we see her again?" Ethan smiled faintly, brushing her curls aside. "She was just helping us for the party, sweetheart." Lily looked down sadly, whispering to herself, "But I liked her." Ethan didn't reply, but the look in his daughter's eyes unsettled him. Why did it feel like Grace had left a mark much deeper than a stranger should? The next week passed in its usual rhythm: board meetings, school runs, late nights at the office. Yet, something kept tugging at Ethan's thoughts. Grace. Her laughter, her calmness, the way she spoke to Lily as though the little girl wasn't just the CEO's daughter, but a person who mattered. One evening, when Ethan came home earlier than usual, he found Lily sitting at the dining table, scribbling something with crayons. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" he asked. Lily held up a picture. It was a sketch of their small family, her, Ethan, and a third figure, a woman with a dress and long hair. Ethan's heart tightened. "Who's this?" he asked softly. Lily's eyes sparkled. "It's Grace. She should live with us, Daddy. Can she stay forever?" Ethan froze. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Children had a way of saying the simplest words that cut through the deepest wounds. "Lily," he began carefully, "she's not really part of our family." Lily crossed her arms stubbornly. "But she feels like family. Mommy's gone, and I don't remember her much, but Grace made me feel safe. Like maybe God sent her to us." That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan sat alone in the living room. He thought about his late wife, about promises he had made to never replace her, and about the walls he had built around his heart. But Lily's words echoed in his mind, "Can she stay forever?" The next morning, almost without realizing it, Ethan called the number on the card Grace had given him, "In case you need a companion for another event." Only this time, he wasn't calling for a party. He was calling for something he couldn't quite name. Grace was surprised when Ethan reached out again, but she agreed to meet. This time, there were no gowns, no champagne glasses, no music, just a quiet dinner at Ethan's home with Lily. To Grace's surprise, it felt natural. Lily showed her drawings, Ethan cooked pasta, burning the garlic bread, which made them all laugh, and for the first time in years, their home felt alive with warmth. Days turned into weeks. Grace began visiting more often, helping Lily with homework, joining them on weekend outings, and slowly becoming part of their lives. Ethan found himself drawn to her kindness, her patience, and the way she never forced her presence but still filled every empty space. But one evening, as they tucked Lily into bed, she reached out sleepily, holding Grace's hand. "Promise me you won't leave," she whispered. Grace looked at Ethan, her eyes uncertain. This wasn't supposed to happen, she was never meant to cross the line between work and heart. Ethan sat down beside them, his voice breaking. "Lily. Grace is here because she wants to be, not because Daddy asked her to." Grace's eyes glistened. For years, she had been searching for a place to belong to, and in the innocent plea of a child, she had found it. Slowly, she nodded. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart." Ethan took her hand, squeezing it softly. No contract had bound them. No agreement had forced her here. It was simply love, raw, unexpected, and real. And when Lily whispered once more, "Can she stay forever?" Ethan finally had his answer. "Yes, sweetheart," he said, his voice steady and full. "She's staying forever." Sometimes, love doesn't arrive in grand gestures, it slips in quietly, through a child's wish and a stranger's kindness. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Vibes. Because every share spreads love, and every view reminds us that family is not just about blood, it's about who chooses to stay forever.